Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Lowrance Trading Academy. I am here with my Hook2 12 triple shot, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you all the ins and outs of the chart menu on this unit. Now this is going to be for the Lowrance mapping. I will make another video for the Navionics mapping because some of the settings are a little different. And so let's just go ahead and get started. So as you can see, we are looking at our chart here. I am currently using a Nautic Insight HD card. Now this unit doesn't have all the features as some of the other units do, and so as I'm going through these options, you'll notice that it doesn't have like the photo overlay or the 3D shaded relief or the custom depth shading and stuff like that on it. But the unit will run that card on there. However, though, I mean, for this unit, you might as well use the Insight Pro cards because it basically is going to show you the same thing, and that card is significantly less expensive. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, you see the little triangle there in the middle, which is you. Now, you're going to notice you have your arrow buttons over here. If I press any of them, it brings up these crosshairs on the screen. Now, what these crosshairs do will allow you to kind of look around anywhere on the chart that I want. And the thing about it is when I press my arrow buttons and it brings up these crosshairs, the unit is no longer going to follow me around. It'll still be locked onto GPS, but you'll notice that your little triangle will actually just kind of drive right off the screen, and you'll have to keep using your arrow buttons to follow it. So what you do is you can just simply press this X button right here, and it locks it right back on. And then it just follows you anywhere you want to go after that point in time. So just remember that when you press the arrow buttons, make sure to press the X when you're done. Now, so what we're going to do is to bring up the options, we're going to press our enter button here, which is the button with the 3 white lines and then down into the left arrow. So I hit it. Now you see your options here. Now the first one is going to be new waypoint. So what we do is we're going to just press our enter button here and brings up our new waypoint options. Now from here, what you can do is if you want, you can change the name of it. So I'm just going to press my up arrow button, highlight the name, which defaults to, if you don't have any waypoints on there, it'll default to 001, or if you have multiples, it'll default to the next number in the sequence. But if you want to change it, you can just highlight it, press your enter button here. Now it brings up the screen with the keypad where I can go through and I can change it to whatever I want. So again, we use our arrow buttons. Now I'm going to highlight the little X there and press my enter to delete what's there, and then I can just arrow over. I'm going to name it test for the sake of the video, so I press it on each letter there. Now these are all capital. If you want to do lowercase, you can go over to the little ABC here, click on it, and it sets everything to lowercase. So I go back up, E S T. Now when I'm done, I arrow over to the green arrow, or the green enter, sorry. Press enter, and now you can see that is our new waypoint name. Now also, you'll see your coordinates listed there. Now let's say, for example, somebody gave you a list of different coordinates for good fishing spots, and they had them all written down on a piece of paper. Now what you can do is to put them in manually, you can just create that new waypoint and then go up here and click on this right here. Now this gives us our option to manually type in whatever waypoint coordinates we want. And then when you're done, you can go down and hit OK, and it'll actually take you to that specific position. Another way of doing it is you can use your arrow buttons to go left and right. So let's say we have that highlighted, and I click on a number here. I change it. Actually, let's go and set it to something a little more off. So we set that there. So now that coordinate is a little different than what we had originally. So I hit OK. And when we get done here, you're going to see how it's going to move it to another position. But for the sake of it, I'm going to show you the rest of it. So you see this little icon here. When you click on it, you're going to see a bunch of different little icons on here. There's about 16 of them. And it just kind of gives you like a little icon to choose. And let's say you anchored at this one particular spot, or you found a good fish. So you can choose the icon that you like for that particular spot. So we're going to choose a little fish. And then you have your little color wheel here, which allows you to change the color of that particular icon. So you can see we've got different colors here. We're going to choose a blue fish, select it, and then when you're done, you just go and highlight save and press enter. Now you're going to see when I press enter, it actually set our waypoint in a different location than where we were. Now see, it set us on that spot. So like I said, if you're just mainly putting in your own coordinates, when you enter them in, it's going to take you to that position, so that way you can tell that that was the right spot when you put them in. And then when you're done, again, how we see we have our crosshairs here, we can just hit our X button and it takes us right back to our original position. All right, so the next step here, let's press our enter button again. So we already did new waypoint. So let's go down, we're going to show you the find feature here. So we're going to select it. Now you've got two options. You can either choose specific chart items on the screen or specific coordinates. Now the coordinates is kind of like what we just did, except that it won't mark a waypoint at that spot. It'll just take you right to it and allow you to view it. But for now, we're going to do the chart item. We're going to click on it. Now it's going to take you to this screen here. Now what it's going to do is it's going to, after a second or two, it's going to show you all the different chart items within a specific area or specific range of where you're at. And what you can do there at the top where it says name, we can actually select it and we can type in a whatever it is that you're looking for specifically on here. Now there's also different types of categories that you can view. You know, as you can see, there's a lot of different categories. Now you can see all these different ones here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search for one. Let's try, we're going to do seabed just for the sake of it. S-E-A-B. There we go, seabed. We go over to enter and select it. Now you see it's searching, and what it's going to do is it's going to bring up everything that has the name seabed in it within a specific range. Now it gives you the distance, gives you a little information on it, and if you go to one of them, so like here, I can press enter on it. Actually, let's go back. So we got to arrow down first, sorry. We go down, we're going to highlight one here. We're going to press enter. And now you can see it's going to give you all this different information about it. And you're going to see it just kind of gives you the coordinates, gives you the distance, the bearing. Now if I press enter again, you're going to see where it says go to, show, or you can create a new waypoint on it. Now if you do the go to, what it's going to do is it's going to draw a line from you to that specific position. And you're going to see the little line, and it's actually going to navigate you to that point. Now show is going to obviously just show it to you on your screen, and then the new waypoint is going to set a waypoint on it. So for the sake of it, I'm going to go to. So I press enter. Now you see this line that drew up on here. Now if I arrow down to it, you'll see there's a little circle around it. Now that is the specific point that it was saying was a specific seabed area. Now you're going to see this little shaded area to the side. That is your cross-track error. So if we go into the unit and we set an alarm for that, if you travel outside of that little shaded area, it's going to set it off alarm and say that you're going off course. Now generally it's going to always show this on there, so again, don't be alarmed by it. It's supposed to be there. And then now if we're done with that, we don't want to go to it again, we can press our enter button, and then you're going to see where it has navigation. You can click on navigation, and you can either restart your course from wherever you're at, or you can hit cancel. Now say you drive way off course over here. Now the line is going to continue to stay in the one single spot. And so if you're one of those guys who navigates using your bearing and things like that, you know, it may still continue to show off from where you need to go. So if you travel off here, you can actually restart it, and what it'll do is it'll redraw its line from where you're at back to that original position. So that way it'll realign your bearings and your course over ground on how to get back to it. Or if we're done with it, you can just arrow down to cancel, press enter, and you see how it removes it off the screen. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit our X button here, close out the menu, hit it again, and we're recentered. All right, so let's go back. Now let's go back here to find again. Now we'll do the coordinate. When you click on it, you'll see how there's the just blank coordinates here. Now if you press enter on there again, it's going to go back to that original screen where we saw where you can manually type in whatever coordinates that you want. Now I don't have any coordinates on me right now, so I guess you can imagine how to do the rest of it. And just manually go in here, type in, I say do. And you can punch them in. Now, if you press enter on a specific number and it doesn't accept it, that means that coordinate doesn't actually exist. So don't be alarmed when it won't take it. So if somebody gave you some coordinates and you're trying to type them in and it just won't accept it, that means the particular unit won't use whatever coordinate system that person gave you those coordinates written in. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go back down to cancel. Or if, say for example, you did want to go to it, you could arrow over and hit OK. But anyways, we're going to hit cancel. Go back to cancel. Now we're going to close. All right, so the next option on here is going to be new route. All right. Now this unit is one of the easier units to set routes on. So we're going to select it. Now what's going to have you do is we're going to select our different basic legs of where we want to go. So we're just going to arrow over. We'll press enter on each spot. Now you're going to see like a little green dot's going to show up on that spot. And then all you do is you arrow over to the next point, press enter, and you continue to keep doing that as it sets up the different legs for this route. Now, if you watched my other video on the basics of the unit, how I mentioned that there were different little icons up in the corner that basically tell you what that button does. It's kind of giving you direction. So you can see if I press that little icon right there, which is my enter button, it adds a point. Or right here, if I hit the X, it finishes the route. So for right now, I'm going to hit my X. It finishes the route. Now it's going to ask me if I want to save or discard. I'm going to go ahead and press enter on save because it's lit up in blue. Now it gives me the option to name it. Now it's always going to default to 001 or 002, whatever next number is in the sequence. So if you set up 3 routes already, it's going to give you 004 as the next one. And then when we're done, you just go to enter, press your enter button, and now it is saved there on the screen, and it will always be there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit our X button and recenter it. Now, you did notice I had a little option up there that said clear cursor, and it showed this little button here. That does the exact same thing as hitting the X. Now, this button here will do various things depending on what it is that you're trying to do. But your X button is always a good button to press as a default to just kind of take you back to where you originally were. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hit enter. Now let's go to the next option, which is more options. And press enter. All right, so now we've got overlay. What we're going to do is we're going to click on this, and as you click on them, you're going to see it's going to kind of cycle through. Well, what structure does is you're going to see on here, and I see this little area right there pop up. What that does is it overlays your side imaging structure scan right there on top of your chart. Now, I'm going to go ahead and exit out, and so that way I can zoom in. Now, one thing to remember, you've got your plus and minus buttons. Your plus button is your zoom in, your minus button is your zoom out. Now, you can't zoom in or zoom out whenever you have a menu up on the screen. As you notice it, as I go in deeper into here, I set, say, structure on here. So I press it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to exit back out. Now I'm going to zoom in on here. And as you can see, this is what it looks like underneath the water per my side imaging. Some people like this because you can kind of, say if you're in basically a smaller body of water, you can scan all around over that lake or a river or even a bay or coastal area. And it's going to show you exactly what it looks like underneath the water per your side imaging. It's a nice little feature these units have. It's kind of one of those things that, it's kind of a preference. Some people like to use it, some people don't. Now what I'm doing is I'm pressing my minus button right now to zoom back out on this chart. Now one thing, as I mentioned before, I'm using one of the Nautic Insight HD cards. Now this unit really isn't, like I said, designed for those bigger, more powerful cards like that. And so as I zoom in and out, it's a little bit slower kind of reloading the screen as it would be if I was using just the built-in map or if I was using a pro card. There's just less data on it, and so the unit's able to kind of calculate and process that information faster, which allows it to kind of zoom in and out and process your screen a little bit quicker for you. What we're going to do now, so you can see how we have our structure overlay on. So we're going to go back into our more options. Now, right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that off. Or if I leave it on, you can see how I have structure options there. Now if I click on that, you're going to see now we have our transparency. What that's going to do is, when we click on that, the higher we go, the more we can see through that overlay that we have there. and it just kind of allows you to see the information behind it. Say if there's a lot of contour lines, depth soundings and stuff that you need to see while you're traveling around, it's best to increase that transparency. Or if you don't care about that and you want to see that structure in real good detail, you can lower it down. So we hit the X to go back. Now we also have our palette. This is going to be the color of it. So when you click on it, you're going to see there's a lot of different colors that we can choose from. So I click on it, it's going to change the colors. That's the same thing as when you're on your structure scan screen. You can change the color, how it appears. It's kind of more of a personal preference kind of thing. When you're doing an overlay, I kind of like number 9 because it shows up a little bit easier to see, so as does number 6. But we're going to go back to number 9 because that's the default. We're going to go back. Now we also have our contrast. This is going to be the brightness and the darkness of just our side imaging. So as we go up, you're going to see it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter, the structure does on it. As we go down, it gets darker. You know, again, kind of a personal preference. You really don't want to go too high because then it's just too bright and it's kind of hard to see the structure that's on it. The same thing with going down too low, makes it a little bit too dark. And so, you know, kind of play around with it, see what works best for you, but somewhere between the 30 to, 50 range, maybe even up to 60, is probably where you want to keep it at. Anything above and below that's going to make it a little too difficult to see. So we're going to go back. Now we have water column. What that does is, let's go ahead and zoom in on this so we can see this a little bit better. Go back. Let's go into our structure options. Now when we do our water column, you can see how it puts in that water column area right there. Now when you're actually on your side imaging screen, you're going to see the water column, which is the area in between the surface and the bottom where you can see your fish and different things like that. Now, for right now, you can see it. I mean, it looks really nice. It makes our structure kind of stand out a little bit better. But when you're mapping out a large area and you're kind of zigzagging back and forth, having your water column on will kind of distort the picture, make it a little bit more difficult to be able to read it, and understand what you're looking at. And so if you're just doing a single pass, water column's great. But if you're mapping out a large area, I recommend turning it off. Now, you also have clear live history. Now, obviously, that's pretty self-explanatory. When I hit clear live history, you're going to see that it removes it, and it's going to start back over in the recording on it. So let's go ahead and go back. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn our overlay back off. Now we're going to go to orientation. Now, what orientation does is this is going to be how your screen shows up on here. I'm going to zoom out a little ways so that you can kind of get a better understanding of what this does. As we zoom out, there we go, we can see all of our detail. Now let's go back into it. Now, right now, we're on north up. North up is the default for the unit. Now, what that does is you're going to notice you have the little north arrow right here. That means that direction, what is up, is always north. And so as you drive around, your little triangle on cursor is going to turn left and turn right, and go forward and back and just kind of move around the screen. Now, sometimes I find that a little bit difficult to navigate with. And so what I do is I go into here and I switch it to course up. Now you see how it flipped the screen around. So what that does is it keeps your triangle pointed straight upwards, and you'll notice your little arrow up here is now pointed off to the side like that, showing that north is that direction. So as you drive around and say you turn right or left, the screen is going to rotate with you. And so that way, whatever is straight up on the chart is what is directly in front of you at all times. Me personally, I find it easier to navigate with that. Now, if you're looking at a large area on here, things being rotating around and stuff may be a little more difficult, but as you zoom in and you're actually navigating with it, again, like I said, I think it's a lot easier to use. Now, the next option down here is going to be look ahead. Now, all this is going to do is it's going to drop our cursor down on the screen. So now you see it drop down here. That just basically allows you to see a little bit more in front of you as you're traveling around, navigating, kind of lets you see what's, further ahead. It's, again, just another little personal preference option. So for the sake of it, we're going to turn it back off. It's going to recenter ourselves right there. Now let's go back down to the last choice here, which is going to be our chart options. Select it. Now you're going to see these few choices here. Now some of these may or may not show up depending on what Lowrance mapping cards you're using. I'm using again the Nautic Insight HD so that it gives us full access to all of the options on here so that I can show you guys what each one does. But don't be alarmed if they don't all show up on there. So if you're just using the internal maps or you're using a pro card, you may not get all of these. So the first one here is going to be our chart detail. Now you're going to see it's going to default to full. As we go down and we select medium, you're going to start seeing information delete off the screen. As we go all the way down to low, you can see how a lot of it moved off there. We go back up and see how it's very basic and blank. Now there may be some areas that just have too many contour lines or too many depth soundings and it clutters up the screen. Then you might want to drop it down. To me, I prefer it to be on full because I want to see all of the detail that's there. Now, again, how I go back up and I select medium. And again, like I said, because I'm using that HD card, this unit is a little bit slower, which is again a reason why I don't really recommend using them on here. But now if we go back up to full, you're going to see it's going to add all of that detail back on there here in just a second. Give it a second. Loads. There we go. There's all those depth soundings that pop back up. We're going to go back. Now, next one is going to be depth palette. Now there's also, before I go into there, you're going to see how there's the safety depth on here. Now, that option isn't going to be available if you don't have the depth palette set to the safety depth option. But, so let's go into depth palette, and you can see how I have safety shading set. If I have one of the other choices, that safety depth is going to be grayed out and it's not going to be there. But what we're going to do is we're going to start off at the top here. So we've got depth shading. All this is going to do is this is going to change all the colors on the screen. So like I said, depth shading. Let's give it a minute, and it's going to change all of the colors that we've got here. There we go, all the different shades of blue. I kind of like this one personally. You know, I just kind of like the colors that show up on it. To me, it's a little more appealing to the eye. Now, the next one's going to be a paper chart. This one's going to be a little bit darker blues. It's going to look more like those paper charts that, you know, the older fishermen used to use on there, which still, again, if you are fishing offshore, you by law have to have still a paper chart or paper maps on the boat. And so that's why that disclaimer shows up on your screen when you first turn it on that says, do not rely on this product as your primary source of navigation. That's a legal disclaimer because, like I said, it is against the law to not have those paper charts. And so you guys should be familiar with the way this looks here, but let's go down to traditional. Now this is going to be an all solid blue color. It's just kind of the old default Lowrance chart colors. And so you can see here, it's all just the same shade of light blue. Now we can also go back down to safety shading, like what we had originally. Now what that's going to do is we can set a specific number on there. And so then anything past that particular number that we set is going to show up as white. And so let's go back actually here, and I'm going to show you that. So right now we have it at 11 foot. So basically anything deeper than 11, at least a contour line. Now that only applies to the contours. It doesn't apply towards just the depth soundings. So if you have just individual spot soundings on there, they may not match up. So as you can notice that there's some 13s and stuff that are still in the color. That's because those are not depths that are associated with the contours. They're depths associated with just spot soundings. But so as I say, you have 11 feet. If we click on it, we can go through and we can change it to anything else. So let's say we're going to change it to 40 feet or 41. I go down here, I hit OK, and we're going to give it a minute. Now anything past that particular depth is going to turn white. Anything before it is going to be a shade of blue. All right, now you see it pop in, and there's all the blues that come up there. So that's a nice little feature. Kind of allows you just at a quick glance to know that, okay, this depth past this certain area is, you know, deeper than what I want to go into. And so it's just kind of a quick reference on it. So let's go back in to our options. We go more options here. We go to chart options. And now the other one here is that I didn't cover when we went into it was our depth filter. Now what that's going to do is when we set it, it's going to remove anything past a certain depth as far as spot soundings. So let's say we want to do, let's just say, oh, you know what? let's do the 41 feet like we had the other one set to. So we hit OK, and then we give it a second while it loads. All right, so you can see there that it removed all spot soundings and depths past that 41-foot marker. Again, just another thing, kind of removes clutter off the screen. You know, anytime you see where it's, like how I said it, where it's white, there's no depths, that's an area you don't want to go into. Again, just another personal preference kind of thing on the unit. So let's go back in. All right, so we go into chart options again here. Let's go ahead and we're going to turn off some of that stuff just for the sake of it. Let's go ahead and set this all back to 0. All right, so we saw them all come back here now that we set it back to 0. So let's go back in, options, chart options. And now the last one that I haven't done here is our categories. Now what the categories is, it's basically going to give us a list of every feature on this chart. So as you see, we have like little tides, we have our little markers like our buoys, depth soundings, just anything that's on here. What we can do is we can click on categories, and it's going to give us a list of all the categories that you can choose between. And you're going to notice it has a little check in the box there. Now when you remove that check out of that box, it's going to remove that particular item off of the screen. Now what you can do, there's two options here that you can use. So if you press your enter button, it takes the check out of the box for that entire category. But let's say I don't want to close out that entire category. There's just a specific option inside of it. So we add it back in, but this time we press our right arrow button, and that drops it down. Now you can see all the different sub options in that category. You can then go down and remove a particular one. And now at a quick glance, you'll notice that this first box turns blue. That means that there is a particular item removed off the screen under that particular category. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add it back on. Now let's go ahead and exit back out of there. And you can go and play with that. Again, most people want to see all the information on the screen, but let's say there's something in your specific area that's just really cluttering up the screen and you don't want to see it anymore. Well, you can go into that category and go remove it, so that way it just clears up your screen quite a bit and just makes it a little bit easier to use. All right, so that covers all of the menu options on here. Now there's a few more things that we can do. What we're going to do is we're going to close out of here, and then we're going to actually bring up our crosshairs. So we're going to bring up the arrows, because you're going to notice that when you have the crosshairs on the screen and you press your enter button like that, you're going to see there's actually a couple of extra menus that pop up there. There's going to be the go to and the info button. Now what you can do is I can go to, and it says go to cursor. Now if I press enter, it's going to bring up that navigation line like it did before. See how it drew the little line right there? And that just kind of gives you a little navigation point. That navigation menu comes back up there where you can go in and you can restart it, or you can cancel it. And it's just a way to use the unit a little more advanced to travel to specific destinations, locations. Kind of keeps you set on a specific path for you. Now let's go ahead and we're going to cancel that. So remove that off the screen. All right. And then the other one I wanted to show you here. And so let's say I want to know what a particular item on the screen is. So let's say the T right here, which is a tide marker. I can set my crosshairs right over the top of it. I can press enter, and then I can select info. Now you're going to see all the different information that is behind that particular marker on there. Now sometimes if you're zoomed out a little ways, there may be multiple markers in a specific area, and so it's going to give you each option on there. Now the little cool thing about the tide markers is that if I select it, it then shows me the tidal information for that day. And so you can see for the sunrise, the sunset, and what the different levels are throughout that particular point in time and day. Or let's say I want to scroll between different days. I can sit here and push my up and down buttons as it switches between. Let's see, I'm going into different days here. So I go forward and back. And it's just kind of that way you can say, okay, I need to know what the different levels are at this time, this weekend. And so then I can scan it forward. I can see what those levels are, and I can kind of, figure out what it is that I want to do before I go out there for that day. It's just a nice little feature that Lowrance adds on. So let's go ahead and go back. And so there's other things like this where I can click on it and it just kind of gives me a little basic information about it. Some things will have more info than others on them. So different ones like that. Sometimes you'll have like if there's like a little icon for a fish, especially on the lakes, you can go and put it over that and select it, and it'll actually give you a bunch of different fishing information. Like it'll tell you what type of lures to use, what type of fish are biting, what type of fish are actually in that particular area. I recommend go around and play with it. There's a lot of cool information hidden in there. So I recommend looking at all the different features, different markers that show up on the screen there. And so that's going to be about it for today. Again, like I said, I'm going to do another video for the navionics mapping. If there's anything that you guys want to see, if you guys have any comments, leave them below. I'm happy to make custom videos for guys who want to see or know how to do a specific function with their unit. And so yeah, all right, well, that's about it for today. All right, well, that's it for today, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it below and hit the subscribe button and the little bell. This will allow you to get notifications every time I release a new training video for your favorite Lowrance product. Also, I wanted to give you guys some really exciting news. We will have our very own website pretty soon, LowranceTrainingAcademy.com. It's going to have even more of your favorite in-depth, comprehensive training videos, so keep an eye out. Of course, I'll be sure to let you all know along the way when it will be up and running. And don't forget, when you watch videos from Lowrance Training Academy, the difference is night and day. Alright, I'll see you all next time.